Every morning, the smell of coffee and the sweet scent of jasmine filled our home. But this morning, a single click of a mouse would reveal a secret that would shatter our entire $300,000 future. The smell of coffee and the faint, sweet scent of the jasmine blooming outside our window. That's how every morning started for the past 7 years. That's how this morning started, too. Mark's arm was draped over my waist, his breathing a steady, warm rhythm against my back. For a few blissful seconds, I could pretend everything was normal. I could pretend the crushing weight in my chest was just a bad dream, and that the life we had so meticulously built wasn't a fragile house of cards, teetering on the edge of collapse. "Morning, beautiful." Mark's voice was a low rumble, thick with sleep. He kissed the back of my neck. Orrin, I had to physically restrain myself from flinching. I forced a smile, turning in his arms to face him. His eyes, the color of warm honey, were still soft and trusting. They were the eyes of a man who believed his world was secure. The eyes of a man I was about to break. "Morning," I whispered, trying to keep my voice from trembling. "Did you sleep well?" "Like a log," he grinned, stretching his long limbs. "Dreamed about the house again, the one with the big oak tree in the front yard. I was on the porch swing, and you were bringing me lemonade." The house. It was always the house. Our shared dream, the singular goal we had been working towards since the day we got married. It wasn't just a building of wood and nails. It was a symbol of everything we wanted: stability, a family, a future. And for the past 2 years, that dream had a tangible form, a dedicated savings account containing $300,000, my inheritance. My parents had passed away in a car accident when I was 25, and their life insurance payout, every last penny, was meant to be the foundation of our forever. Mark had always been so respectful of it, calling it our sacred fund, money we would only touch for the down payment on a home that would make my parents proud. I managed a weak smile. "Sounds nice." "Nice?" "Sarah, it was perfect," he said, his excitement palpable. He sat up, running a hand through his messy brown hair. "You know, I was looking at the listings again last night. The Henderson property, the one on Willow Creek Lane, they dropped the price. It's actually in our range now. I think this is it. I think it's time." My blood ran cold. The phone on my nightstand felt like a ticking bomb. For the past 6 months, every buzz, every notification had sent a jolt of pure terror through my veins. I had been living a secret life, a life of frantic phone calls, hushed conversations, and desperate gut-wrenching decisions, a life that Mark knew nothing about. I had wanted to tell him, I truly did. 1,000 times the words had formed on my tongue, but they always died there, choked by fear and shame. I kept telling myself I could fix it, I could handle it, I could protect him. "Mark, maybe we should wait a little," I said, my voice barely audible. "The market is still a little volatile. Maybe—" He looked at me, his brow furrowing in confusion. "Wait? Sarah, we've been waiting for 2 years. We have the money, we have the dream. That house is perfect. Wraparound porch, a yard for a dog, a yard for kids, honey. What are we waiting for?" He was so full of hope, so pure in his excitement, and I was the serpent in our perfect garden. I watched as he swung his legs out of bed and padded over to his laptop on the desk. "I'm just going to pull up the account," he said casually, booting it up. "Just to look at our war chest one more time before I call the realtor. God, this feels amazing. We're finally doing it." I shot out of bed, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. "No, don't!" The words came out sharper, more panicked than I intended. He stopped, his hand hovering over the trackpad, and turned to look at me. The confusion in his eyes was slowly being replaced by a sliver of concern. "What's wrong? You look pale." "Nothing. I haven't had my coffee yet," I stammered, scrambling for an excuse. Let's talk about it over breakfast. We can make a plan." But it was too late. The seed of doubt had been planted. He turned back to the laptop, his movements now deliberate, slower. "It'll just take a second, Sarah. I just want to see the numbers, see our dream sitting there, waiting for us." I stood frozen in the middle of the room, my pajamas feeling cold and thin against my skin. I could only watch as he navigated to the bank's website. I watched him type in the username, the password. I watched the loading circle spin, an agonizing symbol of my world about to come crashing down, and then the page loaded. Silence. It wasn't a loud silence. It was a heavy, suffocating silence that sucked all the air out of the room. Mark didn't move. He just stared at the screen. His shoulders, which had been broad and confident seconds before, began to slump. "What?" he whispered, his voice cracking. He clicked the mouse a few times, as if refreshing the page would magically change the reality displayed in stark black and white. No, this is a glitch. It's a bank error." He looked over his shoulder at me, his eyes wide with a desperate, pleading confusion. "It's a mistake, right, Sarah? The site is just messed up." I couldn't speak. I could only shake my head slowly, a single tear tracing a hot path down my cheek. I had failed. I had failed him, my parents, our future. His face crumbled. The disbelief morphed into a dawning, sickening horror. He stood up, slowly turning to face me fully. The honey in his eyes was gone, replaced by a storm of betrayal and ice. His hands were clenched into fists at his sides. He looked at me as if I were a complete stranger, a monster who had crept into his home and shattered his life. "Sarah," he said, his voice dangerously low, a tremor of pure rage running through it. "The account balance, it says $742. He took a step towards me, his entire body radiating a fury I had never seen before. "There's supposed to be $300,000, my parents' gift, your entire inheritance, our whole future." He stopped, towering over me, his face a mask of pain and disbelief. His voice rose from a whisper to a guttural roar that seemed to shake the very walls of our apartment. "Answer me. Where did the $300,000 go?" His question echoed in the sudden, deafening silence of our bedroom. It wasn't just a question. It was an accusation, an explosion of 7 years of trust detonating in a single moment. My whole body trembled, but I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. I was a statue carved from shame, standing in the rubble of our life. His face, usually so open and kind, was twisted into a mask of unrecognizable fury. The man I loved was gone, and in his place was a wounded stranger demanding blood. "Where is it, Sarah?" he repeated, his voice lower now, but vibrating with a terrifying intensity. He took another step, closing the space between us until I could feel the heat radiating from his body. "Did you invest it in some stupid crypto scam? Did you get conned? Did you gamble it away?" Each question was a hammer blow, each one a plausible nightmare he was trying to fit over the impossible reality. I could only shake my head, a fresh wave of tears blurring his contorted face. "No," I choked out, the word tasting like ash in my mouth. It's not what?" he yelled, grabbing my shoulders. His grip wasn't intentionally violent, but it was desperate, the grip of a man trying to shake the truth out of a liar. $300,000, Sarah. My parents contributed to that fund after the wedding. It was my future, too. It was our children's future. You had no right. The mention of our hypothetical children, the ones we dreamed of raising behind the white picket fence of the Willow Creek house, sent a shard of ice through my heart. I had stolen their home. I had stolen their security. Was it a secret debt? He pressed on, his mind racing, searching for any logical explanation, no matter how terrible. "And are you in some kind of trouble? Just tell me. Whatever it is, we can figure it out. But you have to tell me the truth." For a fleeting second, his voice softened with that familiar plea. the us against the world tone that had gotten us through every challenge we'd ever faced. Hope flickered within me. Maybe he could understand. Maybe if I just explained. But the truth was a tangled, ugly thing, and I didn't know how to begin to unravel it. The shame was a physical gag in my throat. He saw the hesitation in my eyes, and the flicker of hope in his own died instantly. His face hardened again, a cold dread washing over his features. "Oh my God," he breathed, letting go of my shoulders as if I had burned him. He took a step back, looking at me with dawning horror. "There's someone else, isn't there? You gave it to someone. No, another man." That was it. That was the accusation that finally broke through the paralysis. "No," I cried, the sound raw and wounded. "Mark, no, I would never. How could you even think that?" "Then what am I supposed to think, Sarah?" he roared, gesturing wildly at the laptop. "Our life savings are gone. You've been quiet and distant for months, sneaking off to take phone calls, jumping every time your phone buzzes. You're lying to me and you're hiding something. If it's not another man, then what in God's name is it?" I sank to the floor, my legs giving out from under me. The fight was gone, replaced by a deep, hollowing exhaustion. I couldn't hold it in anymore. The secret was a poison, and it had finally reached my heart. I buried my face in my hands, my shoulders shaking with violent sobs. Through the tears, through the shame, I finally uttered the name that had destroyed us. Ethan. The room went still again. I looked up through my fingers to see Mark frozen, his chest rising and falling rapidly. Of all the catastrophic scenarios he had imagined, this one had clearly not made the list. "Ethan," he said, his voice flat, devoid of emotion. "My brother-in-law, Ethan. The one who can't hold down a job for more than 6 months? The one who still borrows money from you for his rent? That Ethan?" I nodded meekly, unable to meet his gaze. He let out a short, incredulous laugh that had no humor in it. It was the sound of a man's spirit breaking. "You gave our house, our future, our $300,000 to your brother. What for? Did he decide to buy a sports team? A private jet? What emergency could an unemployed graphic designer possibly have that costs more than a house?" It's complicated," I whispered, wiping my tears with the back of my hand. "Complicated is not an answer, Sarah," he bellowed, kicking at a laundry basket and sending clothes scattering across the floor. He was a caged animal, pacing the confines of our small bedroom. "Did you not think to mention this to me? To your husband? The other half of this partnership? Did it not occur to you that this was a we decision and not a you decision?" "I was trying to protect you," I cried, the justification sounding pathetic even to my own ears. "Protect me?" He stopped pacing and stared at me, his eyes wide with utter disbelief. "You have obliterated our life savings. You have lied to me for months. You have destroyed every ounce of trust I had in you, and you thought you were protecting me? From what? From our own money?" He crouched down in front of me, his voice dropping to a dangerously calm whisper. "I want to know what he needed it for. I want to know right now." I opened my mouth, but no words came out. The real reason was so much worse than he could ever imagine. It wasn't just about money. It was about threats, about danger, about a dark world Ethan had stumbled into that I had been desperately trying to keep from touching our lives. Telling him would bring that darkness crashing down on him, too. Seeing my terrified silence, a final horrifying realization dawned on his face. The anger drained away, replaced by a chillingly calm resolve. He stood up, his movement stiff and deliberate. He walked over to our closet, pulled on a pair of jeans and a hoodie, and then grabbed his keys from the dresser. "Mark, what are you doing?" I asked, scrambling to my feet, my heart seizing with a new kind of terror. "Where are you going?" He didn't look at me. He walked to the bedroom door, pausing with his hand on the knob. He finally turned his head, and the look in his eyes was one I would never forget. It was the look of a man who had lost everything, with nothing left to fear. I'm going to your brother's apartment, he said, his voice as cold and dead as a winter grave. And I'm going to get our life back, one way or another. Panic clawed its way up my throat, cold and sharp. Mark, no, you can't. I scrambled towards him, grabbing his arm, my nails digging into the soft cotton of his hoodie. You don't understand. Oh, it's not that simple. Please, just stay here. Let me explain everything. He looked down at my hand on his arm with an expression of pure revulsion, as if it were a venomous snake. He shook me off with a single, sharp movement. The force of it sent me stumbling back a step. There's nothing to explain, Sarah, he said, his voice a low, chilling monotone. There's only one fact that matters. $300,000 is gone, and your brother has it. That's simple enough for me. He doesn't have it, I cried, the words tumbling out in a frantic rush. Not anymore, it's gone. Mark, you have to listen to me. These people, they're dangerous. The word dangerous hung in the air between us, but it didn't seem to register. He was beyond reason, beyond fear. He was operating on pure, undiluted rage and betrayal. Good, he said, a grim or humorless smile touching his lips. I'm feeling pretty dangerous myself right now. He turned and walked out of the bedroom. I heard his heavy footsteps on the hardwood floor of the hallway, the jingle of his keys, the click of the front door opening. The sound of the deadbolt sliding home was like a gunshot, a final, definitive severing. I stood there, paralyzed, for what felt like an eternity, listening to the sound of his car engine roaring to life and then fading into the distance. He was gone. He was going to Ethan's. A tidal wave of pure terror crashed over me, finally breaking through the shock. My hands were shaking so violently I could barely operate my phone. I scrolled frantically through my contacts until I found Ethan's name and hit dial. My heart hammered against my ribs with each unanswered ring. Pick up, pick up, pick up, you idiot. Hello? Ethan's voice was groggy, laced with sleep. Of course he was still asleep. It was barely 8 a.m. His life was a perpetual state of irresponsibility and chaos, while ours had just imploded because of it. He knows, I sobbed into the phone. Ethan, Mark knows. He knows about the money. There was a pause, then the sound of rustling sheets. What? How? Did you tell him? The sleepiness was gone, replaced by the same panicked edge that was in my own voice. No, he was looking at houses. He went to check the account balance. It doesn't matter how he found out. He's on his way to your apartment right now, and he's... Ethan, I've never seen him like this. He's furious. Oh, God. Oh, no, Ethan muttered. I could hear him pacing. Okay, I'll talk to him. I'll explain. He's a reasonable guy, Sarah. He'll understand. He is not a reasonable guy right now, I shrieked, my voice cracking with hysteria. You didn't see his face, and what are you going to explain? That you gambled our entire future away on a high-stakes poker game run by criminals? That when you couldn't pay, they threatened to break your legs? That they threatened to come after me? The whole ugly story spilled out, the words I had choked on for 6 months. It had started with a small loan of $10,000. Ethan swore it was a sure thing, a way to triple his money and finally get on his feet. Then he'd lost it. He'd borrowed more to chase his losses, digging himself a deeper and deeper hole. When he finally confessed to me, he was already over $100,000 in debt to a man he only knew as Silas. He was terrified. They had a picture of me, he'd said. They knew where I worked. They knew where we lived. So I started paying, draining the account piece by painful piece, each transfer a stab in Mark's trusting back. Each payment was met with a new demand, a higher interest, until finally, last week, I'd paid the last $60,000. The entire fund was gone. Ethan was safe, but we were ruined. Just get out of there, Ethan, I pleaded. Pack a bag and go somewhere. Go to a friend's house. Just don't be there when he arrives. And go where, Sarah? He snapped back, his fear turning to frustration. They know everywhere I go. Hiding just makes me look guilty. I have to face him. I'll make him understand. He's not going to understand. He's going to kill you. I threw my phone on the bed and ran out of the apartment. not even bothering to change out of my pajamas. I didn't grab my purse or my keys. I just ran. I sprinted down the 3 flights of stairs, my bare feet slapping against the cold concrete. I burst out into the morning sunlight, gasping for breath. Ethan's apartment was only 10 blocks away. If I ran, maybe I could get there before Mark. Maybe I could intercept him, calm him down, explain the parts I'd left out, the threats against me, the genuine fear for my safety that had driven my every terrible decision. I ran faster than I thought I was capable of, my lungs burning, hot tears streaming down my face. I didn't care who saw me, a hysterical woman in her pajamas sprinting down the city sidewalk. I turned the final corner onto Ethan's street and my heart sank. Mark's gray sedan was already there, parked haphazardly, halfway on the curb. The driver's side door was wide open. I slowed to a stop, my chest heaving, a stitch burning in my side. The front door to Ethan's ground floor apartment was also ajar, and from within I could hear shouting. No, not just shouting. It was the sickening, percussive thud of violence, the sound of furniture breaking, a guttural cry of pain. I ran towards the door, my blood turning to ice. I pushed it open, and the scene in front of me stole the breath from my lungs. The small living room was destroyed. A coffee table was overturned, a lamp shattered on the floor, and in the middle of the chaos was my husband, his face a mask of primal rage, standing over my brother. Ethan was curled on the floor, clutching his stomach, a trickle of blood coming from his lip. Mark had his fist raised again, ready to strike, but as I burst in, he froze. He turned his head and his wild, furious eyes met mine. For a split second, I saw a flicker of shock, a glimmer of the man I knew. But it was gone in an instant, replaced by that same cold fury. Then, from behind him, another man stepped out of the shadows of the small hallway leading to the bedroom. He was tall and impeccably dressed in a dark suit, a stark contrast to the surrounding destruction. His face was calm, almost serene, with cold, calculating eyes that surveyed the scene with a detached amusement. He clapped his hands together slowly, a soft, mocking sound that cut through the tense silence. "Well, well," the man said, his voice smooth as silk but with an undercurrent of pure menace. "It seems the party has started without me. Ethan, you didn't tell me you had company." He then turned his cold eyes from my brother on the floor to my husband, and finally, his gaze landed on me. A slow, chilling smile spread across his face. "And you must be Sarah. It's a pleasure to finally meet the woman who's been so generously funding our enterprise." The man's voice hung in the air, a chilling counterpoint to the adrenaline and violence. Mark slowly lowered his fist, his entire body rigid. He turned, not taking his eyes off the stranger, positioning himself slightly in front of me as if by instinct. Even in the depths of his rage and betrayal, the instinct to protect me was still there, a ghost of the man he was just an hour ago. "Who the hell are you?" Mark growled, his voice low and threatening. The man in the suit chuckled, a dry, unpleasant sound. He took a step forward, his expensive leather shoes crunching on the shards of the broken lamp. He completely ignored Mark, his unnerving gaze fixed solely on me. "Where are your manners, Ethan? Introduce me to your family," he said, his tone light, but his eyes were like chips of ice. Ethan pushed himself up onto his elbows, wiping the blood from his mouth with the back of his hand. He looked between Mark and the stranger, his face a mess of terror and shame. "Mark, Sarah, this is Silas." Silas. The name I had only ever heard whispered in fear over the phone. The faceless monster who had haunted my thoughts for 6 months, who had bled our future dry. Seeing him in the flesh was 1,000 times more terrifying. He was ordinary in a way that was deeply unsettling. He could have been a banker, a lawyer, anyone. But there was a deadness in his eyes, a complete lack of empathy that made my skin crawl. "Silas," Mark repeated the name, tasting it. "So you're the one. You're the reason my life is in ruins." Silas finally deigned to look at Mark, a flicker of something like pity in his expression. Your life is in ruins because your brother-in-law is a degenerate gambler with an appetite for games he can't afford," he said calmly. "I simply provide a service. I am a purveyor of consequences." He gestured to Ethan on the floor. "He made his choices, and your wife." He turned that chilling smile back to me. "She made hers." I flinched, wrapping my arms around myself. His words were like acid, burning away any last shred of justification I had for my actions. He was right. I had chosen this. I had chosen secrecy over trust, fear over faith in my own husband. "You threatened her," Mark said, his voice dropping an octave. The rage was still there, but it was being honed, focused into a fine, sharp point aimed directly at Silas. "Threatened is such an ugly word," Silas mused, examining his fingernails. "Let's just say I made her aware of the potential complications that arise from unsettled debts. Business is business. I was always very polite on the phone, wasn't I, Sarah?" I couldn't speak. I just stared at him, my mind reeling. This was the man who had driven me to lie, to steal from my own husband, to dismantle our dreams brick by brick. And he was standing here, making small talk like we were at a cocktail party. Mark took a half step forward. "The money is gone. You got what you wanted. Now get out of here before I do something we both regret." Silas laughed again, a genuine, hearty laugh this time that was somehow more frightening than his anger. "Oh, but that's where you're wrong. You see, the money isn't gone. The $300,000 your lovely wife paid me. That just cleared Ethan's initial debt and the, let's call it, administrative interest." My blood ran cold. Ethan, still on the floor, let out a soft groan of despair. "No," I whispered. You said that was it. You said we were even." Silas sighed dramatically, as if dealing with a particularly slow child. "We were even for the moment. But then, your brother, in his infinite wisdom, I decided to try and win it all back 2 nights ago. He seemed to think his luck was about to turn." He looked down at Ethan with contempt. "It wasn't. He managed to lose another $50,000, on credit, of course." $50,000. The number was meaningless. It was like hearing you owed a nickel after you'd already been bankrupted for $1 billion. But it was the principle, the sheer soul-crushing stupidity of it. After everything, after I had sacrificed everything for him, he had gone back. Mark just stared at Silas, then his gaze shifted to Ethan on the floor, and then finally to me. The fury was gone now, replaced by a hollow, vacant look. It was the look of a man who had been pushed past anger, past grief, into a place of utter emotional emptiness. And he had just learned that the destruction of his life hadn't even been the end of the story. It was just an installment. "So, that's why you're here," Mark said, his voice flat. "To collect." "Precisely," Silas said, beaming. "And since our friend Ethan is clearly insolvent," he gestured around the rec department, "and Sarah has already been so cooperative, I thought I'd come to discuss a new payment plan, in person." Suddenly, 2 more men appeared in the doorway behind Silas. They were bigger than him, built like brick walls in cheap suits, their faces impassive and brutal. The illusion of a civilized discussion evaporated. This wasn't a negotiation, it was an enforcement. Mark didn't even flinch. He just stood his ground, his eyes locked on Silas. "There's nothing left," he said, his voice dead. "You took it all. We have nothing." Silas's smile widened, becoming predatory. "Oh, I wouldn't say that. Why'd people always have something? A car? A wedding ring?" His eyes flickered down to the simple gold band on my finger, and I instinctively hid my hand behind my back. "Sometimes," he continued, taking a deliberate step closer, "when the money runs out, you have to get more creative with your collateral." He was looking directly at me now, a possessive, appraising look that made my stomach turn. "Your wife, for instance. She seems quite valuable." Silas's words hung in the air, thick and poisonous. The implication was unmistakable, a vile suggestion that turned the already shattered room into a place of suffocating dread. The two large men in the doorway shifted, their presence a silent, looming threat. For the first time, I think Mark truly understood the depth of the darkness we had stumbled into. This wasn't just about money anymore. This was about ownership. His reaction wasn't what I expected. There was no explosive rage, no posturing. A profound, almost preternatural calm settled over him. The hollow look in his eyes sharpened, replaced by a glint of something cold and hard, something I'd never seen before. He slowly turned his head to look at me, and his gaze was piercing, as if he were seeing straight through the months of lies and into the core of my terror. "Sarah," he said, his voice level and clear, cutting through the tension. "Did he threaten you? Before today? Did he ever threaten you personally?" I couldn't speak. I could only nod, my throat tight with unshed tears. "He told me they had pictures of you," Ethan croaked from the floor, "that they knew where you lived, where you worked. That's why I came to her. I was scared for her." Mark absorbed this information without a flicker of emotion. He turned his attention back to Silas, who was watching this family drama unfold with a smug, detached curiosity. "So you use women as leverage," Mark stated, not as a question, but as a final confirmation of the kind of man he was dealing with. "You threaten innocent people to cover the debts of fools." Silas shrugged, a small, dismissive gesture. "Leverage is leverage. It's the most reliable currency in the world. Fear is a far more powerful motivator than greed." He smiled. "Your wife's fear paid me $300,000. See? It works." "I see," Mark said softly. He took a slow, deliberate breath. "There's just one thing you didn't account for." "Oh?" Silas raised an eyebrow, amused. "And what's that?" "Me," Mark said, and then he moved. And it happened so fast it was a blur. He didn't lunge at Silas. Instead, he spun around, grabbing the heavy, wrought-iron floor lamp that lay shattered on the ground. With a guttural roar, he swung the solid base of it not at Silas, but directly at the large plate glass window of Ethan's living room. The window exploded outwards in a deafening crash of shattering glass, showering the small lawn outside with glittering shards. Silas and his men were so stunned by the unexpected act of destruction that they froze for a crucial second. That was all Mark needed. "Get the neighbors! Call the cops! Yell!" he screamed at me, his voice a commander's roar. He didn't wait for my response. He charged, not at Silas, but straight at the two hulking figures blocking the door. He wasn't trying to fight them. He was trying to create an escape. And he slammed into the first man with the full force of his body, a battering ram of pure desperation. The man grunted, stumbling back into his partner, and for a heart-stopping moment, a small gap opened in the doorway. "Go, Sarah, now!" Mark yelled, grappling with the two men who were now recovering from their surprise and trying to subdue him. My feet were rooted to the spot, my mind screaming, "I can't leave him." But the look in his eyes, a fierce, desperate command, broke through my paralysis. He wasn't just my betrayed husband anymore. He was the man who, even after everything, was willing to lay down his life for me. Wasting his sacrifice was not an option. I ran. I ducked under the flailing arms and scrambled through the gap he'd created. As soon as I was on the front lawn, I did as he commanded. I screamed. I screamed until my throat was raw, a wild, animalistic sound of pure terror. "Help! Somebody help! Call the police! My husband is being attacked!" Lights started flicking on in the neighboring apartments. A window slid open above me. "What's going on down there?" A man's voice called out. The sound of sirens started in the distance, a faint, hopeful wail. Silas, his face a mask of fury at this sudden loss of control, barked an order at his men. "Leave him! Let's go!" I saw them shove Mark hard against the wall before they turned and practically ran out of the apartment, shoving past me on the lawn and piling into a sleek black car parked down the street. Silas was the last one out. He stopped, his cold eyes locking with mine one last time. He gave me a look of pure, unadulterated hatred, a silent promise that this wasn't over, before he too disappeared into the car, which sped away just as the first police cruiser rounded the corner, its lights flashing. I rushed back inside. Mark was slumped against the wall, breathing heavily, a cut on his cheekbone. I ran to him, my hands hovering, not knowing where to touch, what to fix. "Mark, are you okay? Are you hurt?" He looked at me, and the fire in his eyes was gone, replaced by a bone-deep weariness. He didn't answer. He just pushed himself off the wall and walked over to Ethan, who was still on the floor, staring blankly at the destroyed room. Mark crouched down, not with anger, but with a strange, quiet finality. "This is it," he said, his voice raspy. "The lies, the debt, the running, it all ends today. You are going to tell the police everything. And every name, every threat, every last detail. Do you understand me?" Ethan nodded numbly, tears streaming down his face. "I'm so sorry, Mark. I'm so sorry." "Sorry doesn't bring back our future," Mark said, his voice cracking with the first hint of emotion since the fight. He stood up and finally looked at me, truly looked at me. The chasm between us was vast and terrifying, filled with the wreckage of our life. The police were swarming the apartment now, their voices and radios filling the space where our love used to be. The dream of the house on Willow Creek Lane was gone, turned to ash. The $300,000 was a ghost that would haunt us forever. But as I stood there, amidst the ruins, looking at the man who had faced down monsters for me even after I had betrayed him, I felt a flicker of something I thought had been extinguished forever. Hope. It wasn't the bright, sunny hope of a porch swing and lemonade. It was a tiny, fragile flame in a world of darkness, a hope that maybe, just maybe, you can't put a price on a love that refuses to let you go, even when it has every reason to. The truth had crushed him. Yes, it had crushed us both. But in the rubble, we were, for the first time in a long time, standing on solid, honest ground. And we were still standing.